Okay. Hello and welcome to our Hangout on Air. My name is Tina Orndeff and I am a program manager here at Google, and I've also been involved with the current online course that we have around computational thinking. Today we're lucky enough to have some experts in this area, and I'd like to welcome Jane. And Jane, would you like to introduce yourself, and that way you can we can get the conversation started.
Yeah, thanks very much, and thank you for inviting me to take part. I live and work in the United Kingdom. I spent 10 years, I'm a teacher, I've been teaching for the last 10 years, and before that I worked in the IT industry for 20 years, and then before that I kind of did a degree a long time ago in computer science. So very luckily I was in education when within the UK there was a huge change in what we're required to teach to our young children, and the introduction of computational thinking and computer science in a more rigorous format. I was very lucky to be picked up to work on a Department for Education project which explains computational thinking concepts to our teachers, giving them exemplar activities that they can then deliver within their classrooms so that they learn at the same time as their young children learn about computational thinking concepts. And I'm about to embark upon a PhD at Queen Mary's to study computational thinking and how young children learn abstraction. So it's all very exciting.
Yeah, good for you. Good for you. It looks like we have Lorna that she was able to join. Lorna, are you there? She may be having some technical difficulties, but hopefully she can just join in the conversation when things are working for her. But in the meantime, Jane, a couple of questions I wanted to ask you about computational thinking. For example, because you've had experience in this area, what would you describe are some of the more successful strategies that you've been able to implement to help you include computational thinking in your teaching?
I think I'm very lucky in that I've spent time really studying and pulling apart what the kind of fundamental aspects of computational thinking are, and now I spend my time trying to teach teachers about what they are, because once teachers understand that they're things that they already do, it's just then about them going, oh, I think I might be teaching computational thinking here. So I think we naturally do lots of these things, we just don't have the labels that we place upon them, and therefore we don't always think to exemplify them or to use them as mechanisms to overcome barriers in children's learning. So going back to your question, I currently, or over the last couple of years, been teaching children who are about 7 or 8 years old, and one of the computational thinking concepts is decomposition, so the ability to break something down into its parts. And again, I think that's something that some children do very well and other children don't do so well, but once you know that it's there as being something to look at, then you can see, oh, this particular child can't make progress in their learning because they're not very good at breaking something down, and then you can do an activity that looks at breaking something down, decomposition and algorithmic thinking. So I don't know if that answers the question.
Yeah. Well, I agree with what you said as far as teachers. Many teachers are already incorporating these things into their daily routines, but they just don't realize they're doing it. So that, I know, is one of the goals of the course that we're offering is that we help identify and across subject areas that you might not think are used for traditionally in computational thinking as well. So definitely the breaking big problems down into smaller ones or recognizing patterns, that kind of thing, happens in more subject areas than most educators realize. And I think just the same with students and with educators, sometimes knowing that you're already familiar with computational thinking, you just might not know it, then that already breaks down the barrier of being able to utilize it as a teaching tool. So as far as what would you say would be, second question, what are some of the challenges in helping your peers use it or helping students kind of start to incorporate computational thinking into their work as well?
I've not had particular problems with students because I think, again, they just naturally do it. If we teach them these things and off they go. There'll be the natural barriers that children with certain challenges in their spectrum of learning skills may have. So, for example, in terms of kind of, we do this in good ignoring. So we do good sitting, good looking, good listening. We do good ignoring. And ignoring is just being able to abstract and ignore the detail. And some children find that very, very difficult. And it could be, if you think about Piaget and some of the other kind of writers in education, they kind of sometimes propose that children's ability to abstract only kind of develops as they become older. I think I've got some questions there, and that's why I'm doing a PhD in it, because I think that some young children are very good at ignoring detail, and they can work out whether something's a cat or a dog based on ignoring certain features. So from the children's point of view, there's a standard spectrum of challenges that they might have across all sorts of different learning situations. But from a teacher's point of view, I think that's where the challenge lies. Once teachers get this, that abstraction is just ignoring things and decomposition is just breaking something down, and patterns something that, again, we are just requiring our children always to link their learning to see what is the same, what is different. So for me, the big challenge is just giving teachers the confidence that actually they can do this. There's lots of very long words, but actually they're very simple concepts at the bottom of it. And good old Jeanette Wing, bless her, thank you very much, because she's just kind of drawn out of all this morass of stuff that we do in tech these really simple themes that, and they really do, they fill a bag of tricks that we as teachers can then use to overcome barriers in children's learning as they make progress in computer science and in all subjects. If they can break a problem down in literacy, art, history, doesn't make any difference. It's just being able to break something down. So,
yeah, and do you find that there are challenges with more so with younger students or older students, or kind of do some aspects of computational thinking lend themselves to the younger children better than older children, and vice versa?
Certainly within the UK, we've tried to show progression in computational thinking through our programme of study, which is statutory. So that's across the whole of the UK, so it doesn't matter where you live in the UK, you are required to deliver this to your children, and at certain points that they are required to understand certain things. So certainly the focus has been, and this is not to say that we've done the right thing because we haven't done any research yet, but the focus is on decomposition when they're very young, or algorithmic thinking, and they're by the time that they're 7 years old, they're required to know what an algorithm is. But that's something very simple. That's just a recipe, or it's how to make a like a Lego kind of figure, or how to draw a crazy character. So it's just instructions, and it tends to be procedural-based algorithms as opposed to rule-based algorithms. And I think rule-based algorithms are tending to be moved more into slightly older children. But it's when they're very young, so in reception, so that's our little 3, 4, 5-year-olds, 4-year-olds, that they are tinkering and playing with programmable devices, but more than anything that their teacher is drawing out with them this idea of breaking a problem down into its parts and saying that it's got a sequence of steps and that they follow one after another. And that's not rocket science. It's just stuff that we've always done, perhaps often in literacy through instructional writing, perhaps in maths through problem solving, in science through following experiments. But now it can be in any subject.
Yeah, absolutely. Oh, I see that Lorna has tried to join again. Lorna, are you able to hear us? And perhaps we can try it hearing you. Are you? Let's see. I think she's on mute. Lorna, try one more time. Well, unfortunately, poor Lorna isn't able. We aren't able to hear from her right now. But hopefully, if we can later, we'll incorporate her into the conversation again. Apologies for that. So one of the other areas that we had a few questions on, we had a couple of questions on the site or the community page, and one of the questions was, I'll just read it. There have been many exciting new technologies, curricula, and programs in the past few years that have advanced computational thinking and computing education around the world. In your opinion, Jean, what are the most promising developments in this area?
Well, I kind of referred back to Jeanette Wing's work, and I think without her, we wouldn't be where we are, possibly. But you can go kind of further back than that with, is it Papa? I can never pronounce his name, Papa, in terms of the work that was done in the 70s on logo. So things have been kind of rumbling along. Certainly within the UK, there's a group called Computing at Schools, who are a grassroots organisation of teachers who have done so much for the way that we've moved forward in the United Kingdom. And I don't think we would have the curriculum that we have today without the hard work that those guys and girls put into the kind of the first drafts of the new curriculum. Scratch, of course. I can't imagine what we'd have done without Scratch, particularly in Key Stage 1 and Key Stage 2, so that's for us children of the ages about 6 through to 11. So I think Scratch, Computing at Schools, Jeanette Wing, and then obviously all the work that's been done by organisations such as yourselves, Code.org, the Google work, kind of Hangouts. I did a Google course a while ago. So there's the momentum is growing. So there's lots of things. Great.
And then another question was, what do you think are the subjects that should currently include computational thinking concepts in order of priority, and why?
I think that's a really difficult one because it happens naturally once you know. It's a little bit like saying, well, where should we teach reading, or where should we teach writing, or where should we teach maths? So, for example, when I'm teaching maths, then we look for what the most important things are in a problem. And also when we're teaching maths, children draw little, we use programmable toys for them to create routes between questions and answers, but they first got to decide what the most important question is. So they're abstracting, they're generalizing, they're doing all these things. And I think once teachers just realize that they are problem-solving skills, it happens almost naturally. In the UK, we do lots of work in terms of teaching children to read using phonics. And so again, when we're looking for spelling rules, we're deciding, well, which sounds are the most important sounds, and then we look for patterns, so we're making generalizations, and then we build an algorithm of, well, it's going to be I before E except after C. So it happens almost naturally. It's then about the teacher just noticing it and saying, oh, we're doing computer science now. And when they see children not being able to make progress, thinking, well, maybe it's about the subject that we're dealing with, but it could be that it's actually to do with their problem-solving skills. So I wouldn't pigeonhole computational thinking as being only for science or only for maths. It happens in art, PE. Oh my goodness, it's all the time in PE. In fact, I can't imagine, there's nothing about human existence, really, can I think of anything, that doesn't have these problem-solving skills.
Right, and I think sometimes, as you mentioned, the minute you call it out as a separate thing, then it becomes more difficult, because it's the same where you have maybe you'll have computers in the back of the classroom instead of integrating technology into or even the board at the front of the classroom where you write on. Like, if you use that without integrating these tools into kind of everyday classroom environments, I think the difficulty becomes, like, what do we do with this computational thing that's sitting in the corner, as opposed to figuring out the ways, or recognizing the ways actually where it already exists naturally. I think that's definitely one of the challenges. Is as soon as students and educators realize they're already doing it, as we mentioned earlier,
Mm.
then you're like, oh, you have that aha moment of, oh, I'm already
Mm.
doing it.
Mm.
I guess I understand it better than I anticipated. So
And
definitely.
it's really fun and really lovely to my little kids would kind of come running up with their kind of their latest or instructions how to make something or other, and they go, it's an algorithm, and teachers who are kind of saying, and they just drop it into conversation, and they'll say, well, we decompose, and you go, oh, they just used the word decomposed, and it's become normalized and just part and parcel of how they operate, and then hopefully those seeds that have been set with those teachers so that then they can become fishermen and keep on kind of reeling in the kids with the computational thinking. The children, as they move through education, they've kind of got all these very these basic skills that then when they are solving a problem they think, oh, well, I can just break this down. This is what's most important. And I did something like that over there. And maybe if I use a computer to do that, then that'll make it faster. And so the kind of opportunities just kind of explode. And I've got this big thing with my little ones about teaching them about initialization, which isn't particularly a computational thinking concept, but just the idea that if they're using a programmable toy, that they say, well, this is where I start, and it's kind of facing that way. But that's just the same when they're kind of setting up their work area, that I start with a pencil and I put that there, or if I'm sitting and facing in that direction, so that then when they're looking at variables, when they go on to programming Java or C# or whatever new blah 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 language they'll be in 20 years time, they think, right, they do it automatically. It becomes an autonomic response to always set something's value at the beginning, and to know and to start to understand scope of control of scope of control, and instantiation and all those things. So it's kind of people are now starting to unpick what computer science looks like. I'm just kind of getting myself in this frame. So we kind of know that we've got these quite complex technical things that we want to get to, and then we've kind of unpicked it going back to say, well, this is what progression looks like. And it's great. It's really exciting to be part of this now and to help teachers see that they can make an enormous difference to the way that children can contribute. Sounded quite exciting.
And as far as, have you seen, just a couple of additional questions, have you seen or recognized any specific improvements in learning? I mean, I know it's not like, I'm not talking about like official, very traditional research, but just in your dealings with students, and do you find that since you've kind of been incorporating more computational thinking in your environment, have you seen any changes with the learning?
I think I see them in myself as a teacher as well. So I think I become more clear about what my instructions are. And the children, it's like, the Bloom's taxonomy, that to begin with, we just need to know that an algorithm exists or that decomposition exists. So that's quite hard to know how that's going to impact moving up to key stages. Oh, it's Lorna.
Great, Lorna. Great. Yeah, Jane, finish with that, and then we'll introduce Lorna.
Okay.
Can you hear me? Yes, we can hear you now, Lorna.
I've only got voice, I'm afraid.
That's okay. That's okay.
I'm not sure that long that will last.
Okay. Well, we'll try. Maybe.
We'll try.
Okay. Well, since we have you, Lorna, why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself to the group, and then I'll ask you a couple of questions.
Okay.
So would you like to introduce yourself, Lorna?
Yeah, sure. I'm Lorna Warren. I'm a newly qualified teacher. I just finished my PGC at Southampton University, and I start my first teaching post in September.
Oh, exciting. Exciting.
Yes, I hope so.
Yeah, so I'd asked Jane a couple of these questions as well. The first question is, what are some of the successful strategies that you've used to implement or that you've implemented to help incorporate computational thinking into the work that you do?
That's an interesting one, because I think from the school placements I did last year, I didn't see a great deal of it going in. some of the strategies I used was actually when I devised my lesson plans, I had those heads and I checked what my scheme of
Oh, we're having a little bit of difficulty
the
hearing you,
Excel
Laura.
spreadsheet.
Your connection isn't quite stable, so we're unable to hear you clearly. That's too bad. Unfortunately, I don't think it's going to work having Lorna participate. Sadly. Let's see. So, let's see, Jane. Why don't we just continue the conversation? Apologies for that. Apologies, Lorna, that we can't include you today. This is, I'm sure, this is part of technology that is always challenging. It works 1 minute, and sometimes it doesn't work, especially when there's the need for it to work seamlessly. It feels like it can anticipate the need that we have for it to work perfectly today. So Jane, just to finish up that the thought that you had that we were talking about, where you have been, have you been seeing kind of change in the way your students learn?
Yeah, so I think it's about Bloom's taxonomy, and about if you start off by introducing terminology that as a collective group you all understand. So then the idea of an algorithm being this set of instructions or steps or this something that kind of follows one after another. So I'm talking about procedural algorithms as opposed to rule-based algorithms, that it starts to become part of your vocabulary and children notice it, and so they're starting to abstract because they're thinking what's most important. And as a teacher, then I start to say, well, have we got all the things that we want? Have we got all of the steps? So we're looking at completeness. We've got this idea of initialization. How do we start in the right way? And it's just making, what I see in my little children is a better problem-solving methodology, a better problem-solving approach. And I see myself then being able to focus on those children who, say, can't decompose or find abstraction more difficult. And that's where, so going back to one of the projects that I've worked on, which is Barefoot Computing, which I've posted on the community with a link. It's a set of resources that are written by teachers like myself and John Chippendale and Zoe Ross. So I've come in as primary, particularly for younger children. Then we've got people of each of the different ages who cover teaching children of each of the different ages, and we explained what abstraction looks like if you are a reception. So that's you're teaching 4-year-olds, or you're teaching 6-year-olds, or 8-year-olds, or 11-year-olds. So what does, say, generalization look like in a classroom, but in a way that's explained for teachers by teachers. So it's not academic, it's not industry, it's for teachers, and it's been incredibly well received. We've got, literally tens, I think 38,000 downloads, and we've done. It's really kind of started to take off. But it's simple activities. So, for example, one of the activities we do is children just have to draw a crazy character, and it's just following some very simple instructions of, draw a body, add 2 wings, 5 legs, those kind of things, and they just follow those instructions, and the teacher pops the word algorithm in, and the kids go, oh, that's a new word, and then the children are required to create their own little algorithm, and the sheet has got the word algorithm on it, and suddenly they're this word has been introduced to their world and their teacher's world, and they start to see the significance of decomposing a problem into parts, and also debugging and evaluation and collaboration and all those other kind of lovely skills that are kind of in there with computational thinking. So yes, I do see a difference. And it's very much, it's about me as an educator being aware and then kind of drawing out those skills, from my children. And I could talk as well about things where the specific children with particular learning difficulties, it gives me a vocabulary, I think, that I haven't had before to sometimes talk about the particular challenges that they face in a way that I can share with other educators, and also sometimes with families as well. So, well, they're not very good at abstracting, or they're not very good at decomposing, but that's only after we've kind of shared that understanding of what those terms mean.
Right, right, and I would I would imagine now that those types of terms are being used in your classroom and amongst and other educators are using them as well. That do you see that there's more natural conversation around computational thinking with your peers and with parents, or do you still find that maybe I can imagine that sometimes with parents might be in their newer kinds of ways of talking about older older things that have been happening all along in the
So we just say they find it difficult to break a problem down into parts, and then if the child comes home and goes, "Oh, I've been doing decomposition," then that's where the linking comes. And there's been lots of talk as well about, well, how long will it take for this to really bed into society as a whole, and maybe only after our little children have kind of gone all the way through school and they become educators themselves. But it's slow and steady. It's kind of that kind of grassroots thing, which CAS, Computing at Schools, is very much all about, and Barefoot Computing is all about. Of just kind of starting with this community of educators. That's exactly what you're doing with your course. It's about educators helping other educators. And I do very much, it's that Bloom's taxonomy of kind of, first of all, we just need to know what the words are, and then we can start to, use them, apply them, start to unpick them a little bit more, and to gain a much deeper understanding. And it could be that there are other computational thinking concepts in there that we've not yet drawn out. The jury's still out on exactly what computational thinking is, and whether parallelization is in there or not, or whether you should have collaboration. And so, but we are at least looking at this. And from working in technology and then going to education, I was really shocked, because it felt like we weren't giving children the skills that I felt I'd used as a technologist. I was a bit kind of lost in just being quite a passive user of technology, rather than going, right, we need to solve a problem, how are we going to do it? So it's great, it's fantastic to see the changes.
Right, I think so often technology is consumed and not used for creation. And so I think that by introducing computational thinking early on, but weaving it in throughout all subject areas and for all ages, I think that hopefully that will naturally evolve quicker than previously. So yeah. So we really appreciate your time today, Jane. And it's too bad that our other panelists were not able to join, but perhaps we'll do another Hangout on Air. For those of you who are watching this either live or recorded, you're free to continue to ask questions in the Google Plus community or on the YouTube page, and we can get those answered as well. And we really appreciate your time today, and thank you for all your efforts.
Well, thank you very much, and I wish you wish you well, because you're doing a great job. Good job.
Yeah. Thanks, Jane. And you have a great rest of your day. Thank you.
Yeah, you too. Thank you very much. Bye.
All right. Bye-bye.